I think what he's doing, as he often does, he's throwing something at the wall and then he's getting everyone together and say, right, if you don't like that, what do you like?
Yeah.
Similar strategy to the one that he had in the Middle East. The perception in America is, why are we involved in this still after 3.5 years? So I think there's a reality check.
He's not stopping at Ukraine. He will not stop until he's swept up many more countries into this and potentially caused something much, much, much worse for the global economy.
I think what he's trying to do is enforce his traditional art of the deal, bring everyone together, crack their heads together in rooms and say, let's get this done somehow.
Piers Morgan, let me ask you, why does President Trump appear to be so keen to make this work for Russia rather than Ukraine?
Well, I think he's keen to end the fighting. I've spoken to him multiple times privately about this. He is very sincere that he believes this has just become a relentless slaughterhouse of young men in the peak of their prime of their lives being slaughtered on a absolutely horrible scale, and he wants to bring it to an end. And so I think what he's trying to do is enforce his traditional art of the deal, bring everyone together, crack their heads together in rooms and say, let's get this done somehow. Now,
but that 28-point plan couldn't
Sure.
have been more of a dream for
Sure.
Moscow.
Sure, and we've now had a counter from Europe, which has had counterpoints to all of it. Russia is basically saying, we're not interested. They would, that's their negotiating place. But I think they are probably quietly keen to end this too. And I would say to people who still want to have a go at Trump about this, at least he's trying. He's trying to bring this to an end. I don't see a better offer. And remember, this war raged under Joe Biden's administration, and there was certainly no danger of any peace plan in that period. So I say, let's give this a chance. In the end, it will be Ukraine's decision, right, as to whether they want to end this or not. I think they are desperate. The people of Ukraine, the polls have moved so far now. The people want this over. They've had too much slaughter. So I think, look, I've got hope, but cynicism about Russia and their willingness to do a deal. But if Trump can get this sorted and get a deal done, in the end, I'm afraid Russia will be rewarded for its invasion. That is inevitable. They are going to keep some of the land they've taken.
OK. And do you accept that, Layla Moran? That it's inevitable they're going to keep some of that land?
The position of the Liberal Democrats, most of the parties in Parliament, has always been, we can't out-Ukraine Ukraine. We have to take our lead from where the people of Ukraine and Zelensky are. I was there 7-8 months ago now, and it's true. You know, people are desperate for this to end, but the fighting spirit is there. We met men in a group of 20 who are, you know, severely traumatized by what they've seen on the front line, and every single one of them want this over, but every single one of them would say, if I'm better, I would go back in order to save the sovereignty of my land. And that dichotomy there is very real in Ukraine.
Do you credit President Trump, as Piers Morgan does, with you know, at least getting some momentum going again?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I do not share many of Trump's views, but on things like the Israel-Palestine deal that he struck, I mean, it was neither a peace plan, because it's not going to lead to peace, nor is it a plan, because it needs a lot of detail, but at least it was a framework on which everyone could have a conversation, and it was a conversation around one thing. What seems to have happened here is, whilst I think he's missed the mark in terms of the landing zone, and some negotiations do start that way, I accept that, but at least people are now talking about it. So I kind of agree, let's give it a go, but this is a million miles away from what we understand are the red lines that Zelensky's put out there. And our job, as Britain, we have always been in lockstep with the Ukrainian people and Zelensky. We should stay there. We should not move from that position.
We've been idealistic, I think. Let's be honest. You know, from the start of that war, I was willing Ukraine to win, to fight for everything they could keep, to resist anything, to not give Putin an inch. But, you know, my brother was a former British Army colonel, and he said to me from the start, you know, honestly, bro, he said, this war, Russia are not going to lose this war. They're too big. They've got too much history of just going on and on and on, and they will keep going until they grind everyone down and global interest moves on. And that's exactly what's really happened. And, you know, Russia is slowly inching its way further into Ukraine. So there has to be a reality check. I went to Kyiv 4 months into the war and interviewed President Zelensky. What a remarkable man to me, an amazing guy who could have, on that first night when they were invaded, everyone assumed he'd leave, and he had the opportunity to go.
Been airlifted
but
out.
He stayed and did that video, and, you know, what a hero for doing it. But, you know, he knows. He knows this cannot be won. And there's no will. We talk about Europe wanting them to win, but we haven't really given them the tools to win. And the truth about America, I've been in there for the last month, most Americans now really want out of Ukraine. They want out of this. They think it's burning up their cash. It's not really, because actually the money goes back into all the armaments in America. But the perception in America is, why are we involved in this still after 3.5 years? So I think there's a reality check. And we have to be realistic that we have not given Ukraine enough to win this war, but would we ever have been able to give them enough against a determined Russia who is determined to get their hands on this territory?
Do you think there has been a failure when it comes to European leaders, A, in diplomacy, and B, in the last few weeks, completely failing to insert themselves into this conversation?
It is fair to say it shouldn't have taken Trump coming up with a plan for a coalition of the willing plan to have come forward, and I think that's a fair criticism. But in terms of, what more could we have done? I mean, already this country has said that it's going to increase its defence spending. Liberal Democrats are totally behind that, and that is the right thing to do. But there is a longer term interest here that America doesn't have. Trump, I would imagine, is seeing this a little bit about, how does he sell armaments? For us, Ukrainians make this point very strongly. They are on our front line. And we know from what Putin has said before, and Putin's actually been pretty upfront with people about what he wanted. He told us months before he invaded Ukraine he was going to, just no one believed him. So when a man tells you who he is and then he goes and does it, believe him. And what he has said is he's not stopping at Ukraine. He will not stop until he's swept up many more countries into this and potentially caused something much, much, much worse for the global economy, which I think would interest Trump. So it's in our interests to put a stop to this and show Putin that we will stand by Ukraine till the bitter end, whatever they need.
Piers, you said at the beginning, he sincerely wants the killing to stop. When you look at all those different positions, though, how can anyone trust what he says?
Well, I think he's found it easier to get action in the Middle East. There's no doubt about that. In relation to what you said about not getting a peace settlement, when he got the hostages released, which many people thought was not going to happen, and there's been a relative ceasefire, albeit it's been right on the fringes a few times. So I think he's been, hugely effective there. And again, I don't think Biden would have made that happen. So Trump has this kind of blunt instrument tactic, and he is the master, in his eyes, of the art of the deal. He wants to try. Look, I like it that there's a Republican American president who genuinely prefers peace to war. Trump is not going around invading countries like some of his predecessors, like George Bush and others. I think we should encourage that. And I think what he's doing, as he often does, he's throwing something at the wall, and then he's getting everyone together and say, right, if you don't like that, what do you like? Yeah. Similar strategy to the one that he had in the Middle East. And look, people may not like it, but I say, well, what's the better solution? What is the other option here? Because if you really believe that actually what's going to happen here is we just carry on for another year or two and then Putin just retreats and he gives back the territories taken, we are living in cloud cuckoo land.
But I also think the devil in these things is going to be in the detail, because actually right now we don't have signed contracts. These are deals that are in the making. They are not signed, sealed and delivered.
Long way to go.
We have a long way to go, and so we need to provide a bit of caution here.
And it's now being negotiated and everyone's engaging. It's a question of whether the Russians will engage. I mean, no one knows, right? At the moment they're saying this doesn't work for us.